time passed by, and the astral was established well. Since the point Zoranor was put in place, the planes and primes settled down into a much quieter pace, although Thalasiac had been worked off his feet. He had all he needed bar one thing, and that was the touch of the divine from all the gods, only not upon Temeran as planned, but also within an imbued vessel, so he could carry it into the planes and finish his grafting into the form of Night Stalker. It took many months of bartering in order to gain the aid of the other hosts, as the ones in Dominia had willingly done, as they were for the most part the much more stubborn, especially since the great sleep of chrylsis. However, eventually they all agreed. Well, all bar one. Melurna was having none of it. "You give me a portion of your essence, and I will give you my blessings," she said, grinning ear to ear. He knew it was a folly to accept this offer, and he declined, merely stating, "No worry, I will achieve this without your aid, and you will not have the pleasure of the discord this act would have sown." This seemingly infuriated her, and she offered after the fact several times freely, but it was too late by then, as he had done what he had intended to do. He had woven the imprint of the divine fragments he had been gifted from inside the holy vessel he had created, with help from the newly established astral. It felt good to have that power back at his command. Melurna, however, not being included in this foray, was set about doing her own thing, as was their way. If they were not to be part of this, then they would be part of something else. Her abomination would become her focus for such. Nightstalk was ready to do what he must. In short, survive and hunt other demons. Stalker accepted his role, and of course, his hunting of demons quickly led him into his first confrontation with Temeran. This went very well, or rather it went well as far as Thalasiac was concerned. Stalker had his quarry cornered in a cave system, when some upstart human appeared from a side tunnel and careened into him, striking it with his greatsword, and that was that. His quarry was banished. Temeran turned to Stalker and squinted, trying to make out his form, and then it struck him. This was the one. "You will fall by my blade for the theft of the divine essences!" he cried out, and charged him. He took the blow, assuming it would be nothing more than a mere mortal one, only to find it seared through his carapace and dug deep into his form, and as the sword was drawn back for another blow, he was astonished to see the wound not recover instantly. Temeran noticed the demon still stood, cut but barely harmed by this blow, and he reined in a few more for good measure. "This fiend must be dispatched," he reminded himself, as he set to work swinging his blade deftly. Stalker blocked the first two blows, then caught the blade on the fourth, the third taking the end off one of his spikes, as he set himself up for the catch. "And you must be Temeran, I presume," he sneered, tossing this human, armour and all, to the side, using the sword as leverage, as the demon hunter would not let go of it. "You are not my quarry, but I thank you for doing my will," he said, motioning to the still vanishing cloud of magic where the demon had been. Temeran picked himself up and charged back at his target. "You will be vanquished!" he shouted as he struck home upon Stalker's chest, and Stalker merely stood his ground and let him slide the blade in up to the hilt. "Now I have your sword, do I have your attention?" he asked, drawing himself up to a height far above Temeran's head. Temeran had to let go of the blade, and began chanting something under his breath. Stalker caught the name Boran, as well as Rilana, and a few more he did not know as of yet, and then he felt an intangible magic tearing at his form for a few moments, until he unwove the magic with ease. "Look here, upstart mortal, I care not for this delay. I have essences to take and souls to glean." Stalker ripped the sword from his chest and threw it at Temeran, impaling his left leg to the rock where he had landed earlier. Stalker laughed, Temeran roared in pain and anger, and as Stalker raised a clawed hand, everything went darker than night. "Until next time, Temeran." And he was gone, leaving a wounded Temeran to limp from the caves. His first meeting had gone badly. He would not let this creature best him next time. From this point on he began training, and with the astral being back it made his efforts harder, but also more rewarding. It tempered him, and each time he fought Stalker over the years, he was stronger and more able to combat him. And yet the daemon always seemed one step ahead, with knowledge he should not have, or was more than his equal in every forte. He would best him one day, of this he was sure. Night Stalker made his home upon the realm itself, upon the Prime, as the voice in the deep plains had told him he was not of demonic origin, and his home was to be the Prime. It seemed the voice was correct, as his powers upon the Prime were almost what he expected them to be as a demonic overlord in some ways. It turned out that as Temeran fought him, he seemed to be able to resonate with the Slayer's magic, and almost feel his intentions. He used this to search him out and beat him to his target now and then, to rile him and challenge his foe. Temeran was formidable indeed, although he had been told by Thalasiac not to kill him. He was to harass him and get in his way at inopportune moments. But why? He did not understand. At times he sought to quiz Temeran, to try and pry from his mouth truths about his origin, and why he hunted him so devoutly. All he ever got was something about stealing the essences of some gods of some kind, but he had no knowledge of this, and Thalasiac was seemingly unaware of what he called Temeran's madness. It was more than a little strange, but he had to admit that toying with Temeran was very satisfying, and when he took students on, to train them as demon slayers, he took great glee in toying with them too, putting them through the agonies he placed Temeran through, only to discover they were in no way as hardy as he was, and so ended up killing them haphazardly. This just drove Temeran into further determination and anger against Stalker, and so, from where Thalasiac sat, his job was done for now. He knew they could not kill each other, due to his protections and wards neither of them could sense. Yes, this would work. He was sure of it. Several centuries passed by as Stalker and Temeran played their game of cat and mouse, and Thalasiac watched on, waiting for the Nameless to make his presence known. He did not. It seemed he was somewhere else, perhaps having turned his attention from the Primes? He had to know. He contacted old allies from many Primes, and they all said the same. All was quiet on the incursion front, and no trace of the monstrosity had been seen at all. This concerned Thalasiac, for if he was not tearing down the walls to the Primes and the gods, then he must be doing something just as deadly elsewhere. Perhaps he should travel and see. Then he remembered, just as he began to weave a portal, that he could always just ask the Astral. It was, after all, chrylsis, and perhaps he could tell him from where his skin touched if there was activity. And so he asked. Chrylsis answered that he knew nothing. He opened a portal and headed into the plains, and could find no trace of the Nameless near the Primes at all. He had obviously turned his attention to the demonic planes. This could only be a good thing, he thought. After searching for a few months, decided the Nameless was indeed resting, or at least leaving them be for a time, and so he retired from his search. The Nameless was in fact learning about the Astral. What it was, where it had come from, how to pierce it, pull power from it, and much more. It turned out the Astral was a conduit, from the gods, the god of magic specifically, and that all of this power was unstoppable due to its sheer volume, beyond anything witnessed prior. He could also not enter the Astral, as the skin of it seemed to be warded in some manner against any form of demonic energy, and so he could not force a way past or open a path into or through it. He had tried using all powers and power at his disposal, but there seemed to be no answer to this issue, at least not using his daemon half. Perhaps if he could somehow just use his divinity. He pushed his power within the shell of the host, and attempted to enter the Astral as one of divinity. As he tried to do so, he felt the familiar divine essence of chrylsis himself, refusing him entry. So that was it. The god of magic was no longer with the hosts, and was now one with the Astral. This changed things. He may actually need an ally or two. The first thing he did was to try and contact Terraspine, but was shocked to discover the spine was unreachable. All daemons had lost his scent after the last confrontation he had had with him. This meant that the only ones he could get answers from was Thalasiac, for he knew he had been there, and so he began his search. This was to no avail, as he was behind the impenetrable wall of the astral, which meant that for now at least he could do nothing more than build his raw power from the planes up where possible, and so he did just that.